Today I'm joined by Craig Gallivan, National VP of Sales at CompuMedics. Craig, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So tell me, how did you get into this industry and what does your job entail?
Yeah, so for me, getting into the world of sleep was a little bit convoluted because it certainly wasn't where I started out. In my original industry of choice was high tech, and that was kind of coming out of my undergraduate degree in Canada. I had dabbled a lot while I was doing my undergrad in programming and website design and development. And then, of course, due to not becoming a Y2K millionaire as the bubble burst, I actually got into pharmaceutical sales in 2001 at the urging of my father, who was in the industry as well. And he promised that it would lead to good things, a good chance to not only learn how to sell, obviously effectively, but be compensated well for doing it. And so I was very thankful for that advice and got on with AstraZeneca Canada in 2001. That led to a good run there where we launched Crestor, Nexium, Symbicort, worked with a lot of really, really wonderful people. And then it had me kind of asking what was next after 5, 6 years. And I went on to actually stay within pharmaceutical in Canada, but with a different company called Schering Plough as a hospital spec rep. Schering Plough was purchased by Merck in 2009, 10 in that time frame. And then the next challenge for me was how do I get to the United States and be in the country that I've always wanted to live in and work in and be challenged by. And I then transferred in 2011 with Merck to join Merck USA and spent 2 years with them. Then got into medical device with Zoll the first time around, 13, selling the wearable cardioverter defibrillator called the LifeVest. Had a 3-year run there and then did internal defibrillation with St. Jude, which was purchased by Abbott. Survived that merger and learned a lot. Spent 3 years there and then spent way too many months unemployed, even though it was only 4 or 5, I think. I lost track after a while, the 600 different resumes and everything. But I got on with Itamar after I successfully interviewed with Frank Resta. And then, of course, Itamar was purchased by Zoll. And that was my second foray into the world of Zoll. And then I came over to CompuMedics in June of 2024, and I've been here since. Long, convoluted road, 2 decades plus to get into sleep. But I've really enjoyed myself and the fact that it's been, 6 years of just, continuing to learn, continuing to manage what I can control. And I've been fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of really, really good people between the two companies. And as we continue our build out here at CompuMedics, I'm excited about what's ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, it's important. Working with good people is a very important thing. It's the people you're with day to day. So tell me a little bit more about your current position, what you're responsible for, what an average day to day could look like if you ever have an average day.
Yeah, so I get asked this question a lot, and I recently was interviewed by a gentleman at the University of Texas and then also University of Texas at Dallas, so two different interviews. There really isn't an average because you just never know what one day will hold compared to the next. What I will say is that you just try to get everything done that is really, really grabbing at you, like for your attention and for the urgency in which it displays itself. So there really isn't an average. My days could start as early as 4:30 a.m. when we're putting out the social media blasts that we do. I recently took over marketing and really wanting to bolster what we do on our socials. I have a lot of good help from Brian Squirick, the national director of SaaS. We kind of have come together to really try to heighten the awareness for CompuMedics, the 3 pillars that really form our company. We are fortunate enough to have the Curry group and its software offerings, as well as what they do in the epileptic world. We then have the fine folks at the capital side of our business that look after all of our in-lab, not only software offerings, but also hardware, such as the Grail 4K headbox. And then we have what I do and what I manage day to day, which is the home sleep testing side, where we are responsible for the growth of the SomFit HST and the products that will come after to round out our portfolio. So that's really day to day. In that, I obviously have surrounded myself with not only a very, very capable clinical staff, but also very, very capable sales reps that I manage day to day. And then we overlay that with everything we do on the marketing side.
All right. And what is this product that you guys are selling?
Yeah, so the whole reason for me coming over from Itamar to CompuMedics was to reintroduce essentially the SomFit HST, which essentially is a 4-head worn sensor held in place by an electrode, and it sits on the forehead to collect 10 channels of data for those that have been prescribed an HST. And so we compete within this marketplace with 25, it seems like maybe 30 now extra competitors. And so that's what we do on our side of the business. And then, of course, we're always looking to overlay ourselves into existing CompuMedics customers that are using us for in-lab, but also looking to competitively take other HSTs out of play and have us be introduced into the home sleep testing arena within their respective labs.
So you mentioned obviously there's quite a big market for it at least, and there's a few other players in the game right now. How do you guys fare up against them?
So I think it's fair to say that certainly in what we do, there was first mover advantage for those that produced a more non-traditional HST, one that did not involve a nasal cannula and effort bands as the earlier versions did, and I'm talking in the early to late 2000s. And I certainly think from a non-traditional perspective, and I'm talking about, certainly the market leader, which is the WatchPat from Zoll Itamar, where I once was, right through to every ring and every other modality that's out there. So I think we have gotten out to maybe a slow start relative to what the overall marketplace will allow. I think the more complete that your portfolio offering is, the more likely people are to select you. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how we turn things around when we have things like central sleep apnea detection, as well as offerings that include not only the forehead worn SomFit, but also the SomFit Pro, which essentially will add the effort belts and nasal cannula for those that would like to be maybe a little bit more traditional in their approach to HST management. And then, of course, the big one for us, as it is in this market right now, is always to have a very complete offering with respect to a disposable unit. And the SomFit D was approved, and we're getting ourselves together to bring that to the market. So I think the more complete the portfolio is, the better off we'll be. And we're gearing up for a pretty exciting 2026.
You said slow start. I'm assuming this product got launched pretty recently. Well, you say relaunched.
Yeah. So I would say that the first sightings of it in the wild in North America was December of 2023, and I think joining in June of 24. It was kind of interesting, I guess, how it was launched. Companies go to market with a rather large team, 10, 15, 20 reps, and then they build out from there to where they may have doubling or a tripling of the field force. We chose not to do that, to stay rather small. So over time, we'll see if that's the right approach. Again, I think what it's going to come down to, the technology speaks for itself. The fact that we have EEG, EMG, and EOG in a forehead worn system. So we're actually looking at brainwave activity, as well as a whole host of other more advanced features and channels that we can bring to the market. I think it will certainly pole vault us over the more traditional airflow devices, but also the non-traditional HST that are out there. So we shall see. So I think it did get off to a little bit of a slow start, and maybe that had to do with the fact that we didn't have a field force or share a voice of 10, 15, 20 people out in the field talking about the virtues of SomFit.
So you're planning on launching these two other products, if I'm not mistaken, within 2026, right? So what are you planning to do to make sure that you guys don't get this slow start again?
Well, it sort of has already been underway since the sleep show in Seattle in June of this year. I think creating a hype by simply showing that the products are soon to be available has really, really heightened the awareness within the marketplace. And I think people are certainly clamoring for other options within what they're using in their lab. There is a high degree of frustration around non-traditional HSTs that only have one form factor. They maybe don't or have an inability to include a nasal cannula for the more traditionally trained folks. We see pockets of the United States that certainly have doctors that want a nasal cannula and effort belts. They just simply don't want to maybe trust the newer technology. Peripheral arterial tonometry has been around for a while, but still you have the people that are very traditionally trained, whether it's a generational thing or not, they have to have their nasal cannula and belt. I think when it comes down to having a disposable option, I think the disposable option has to be very, very capable, which the SomFit is. I think there are other disposable options that simply don't add anything over and above maybe what a WatchPat does. And I think that helped us when I was there at Itamar to certainly rule over the market share. But I think with the SomFit D coming, it certainly does offer a number of huge, huge advantages to a WatchPat. And I think the sleep world's well aware of that now based on the feedback we've gotten since sleep
You also mentioned earlier you recently took over the marketing department. What are your marketing plans for the upcoming year to help you achieve these goals?
Yeah, so good question, because it was one of those things like, what do you do when you take over something? And I think you always identify maybe what your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, but also obviously threats. So you do a typical SWOT on these things, but then you start looking out at your five forces and what you can control. I think that we do a number of things very well within our curry offering as well as our traditional capital, but getting the word out there as you go up against some of the juggernauts in the industries, the Neon Codens and the Natises of the world. And then also a company that I think is a bit of an upstart, but certainly has gotten themselves into the minds of those out there in a more traditional sense, capital sense, being Cadwell. So you're always looking at what can we do to heighten the awareness across. How do we, overstep these folks that we're competing with? I would also throw Knox in there. I think they've done a very good job of bringing different modalities to the market, obviously thinking beyond, say, the T3 to the A1. And so, you're always thinking about, okay, what's next, and what does this look like? What do I appear to see in the feedback that comes from, not just this quarter, but next quarter? And how do you get out to the middle of 26, the end of 26? The HST world is going to go through a seismic shift with how the CMS folks reimburse us. How do we get into 27 being best aligned to bring what the market wants, to make sure that people are capturing the ability to be reimbursed so that all of these sleep labs remain viable? And that's part of what we're responsible in getting the word out around and allowing them to make the best informed choice.
Okay. And your product here, is it only B2B or is this also a B2C product?
No, I mean, in terms of direct to consumer, there's a bit of a misnomer that actually exists from the companies themselves. It's more us
Mm.
selling to accounts. What they choose to do with it, as long as a physician and in most cases a board certified sleep physician is involved, then they make those determinations. But we're not CompuMedics .com.au is not selling direct to any actual patients. So different versions of how to get the device to patients, it does exist, but we don't do it directly. So we're out there and selling right into from mom and pop sleep labs right through to the big IDNs that exist in America, as well as some of the larger institutions in Canada.
Okay. And with your smaller sales team here, I'm interested. What would you
Mhm.
say the pros are of that compared to, like you say, a massive sales team that doubles and doubles as quickly as they can?
Yeah, so I think the number one advantage for me is just you're able to keep it on a very personal level in that you have the ability, because you have the time to sit. Like, I just got off some of my one-on-ones most recently, and I'm sitting there saying, I'm really thankful I only have a team of 5 or 6 or 7 compared to when I had a team, say, at Itamar that ranged up to 15, and you're covering 10 sales reps and maybe 5 clinicals over the 10 states. And so now you start to look, and you're just at least I'm thankful for the fact that I can sit down and take an hour to really not only continue to get to know someone, but also be able to give very, very candid feedback on the strengths and weaknesses of their game and how you develop those weaknesses into strengths. I don't think you necessarily can do that justice if you have a team of 15, having done it both ways. And so I think optimally, if I had to put a number on it, it's probably around 7 or 8 that you truly can give the time and the care and the dedication to. And that includes obviously not only in what we do on the sales side, but also what we have to be mindful of on the clinical side. Because I do believe in what I do in the sleep world. If you do not have a strong clinical foundation, then your sales reps don't have much to lean back on. And I think, as much as we think this is a sales game and they have revenue targets and they need to drive that, I really do think with the technical nature of sleep that if you don't have a team of, registered techs backing them and being good for them on speaking the language to the techs that may be having difficulty, whether it be interpreting a report, customizing a report, initializing a device, troubleshooting a device, then you don't have much of anything. And I think, in both companies that I've been in, I've been able to build the best clinical staff outward, and I always put them at the top of the list as to why we either are successful or we are not.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just to add on that real quick, a good product will sell itself. You just need someone who can explain it well enough to do so.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's largely true. I think when you get into the nitty gritty of what we do, if you don't have a strong clinical foundation, I would offer that the product actually doesn't sell itself because of all the intricacies behind the scenes. And I will say, when I think of all of the people that I interact with, I am amazed by what some of these RPSGTs can do on a day in and day out basis to keep things calm, cool, and collected and have their programs be as successful as they can be. I think it does actually start with them, just like I believe it starts internally with our company. And in my past life, it's the clinicals that keep it together, not the salespeople.
Learn something new every day. So, Craig, before we hop off here, where can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Yeah, so I always say to people, I'm probably one of the most accessible VPs, in North America. I love to interact with a whole host of people. Generally, I am pretty active on LinkedIn, trying to help people out, especially given that people help me. Along the way, I got to this country because of LinkedIn. I always tip my cap to that, and I think it is always good to give back. So whether I can help somebody, with a letter of recommendation that I've worked with, if I feel that you're fitting of it, I always take the time out. So I generally try to always keep in mind that I was helped a lot to get here. So I always answer back, and I think that that's the least you can do. But yeah, I tend to be pretty active there. And then if we, exchange numbers, being from the pacemaker and ICD world, you typically don't go too long on a text message from hearing back from me. So I always try to just, be respectful and not be these intermittent texters that bother me. So I always tend to be pretty communicative in my response back.
Beautiful. And lastly, before we hop off here, do you have any last bits of advice you'd like to leave for our listeners?
Yeah, I think, I always get asked, what causes success, to be found. And I think it was in an interview I just did recently where like, how did you find success? And I don't necessarily think that you find it. I think you have to go out and you have to really work towards it. And I was recently asked by a student going through, I believe, their third, fourth year, and what's your one piece of advice for when I get out into the real world? And I first, good on you for realizing that you're not in the real world. Second off, I would say, the one thing that is super, super hard to find as I interview now, 100 plus candidates to hire, maybe the 25 or 26 that I have had to along my way. It's very, very difficult to convey the fact that you have a good work ethic. It's one thing to convey it, it's one thing to actually display it and live it. So I think if you feel that you have one and you are constantly working on developing it to its maximum potential, don't ever forget that it's not about the smartest person in the room. It's often the people that are willing to work the hardest. So I always put that as something that will get you very, very far in life. And I think that I'm a good picture of that, because clearly I'm not the smartest in the room for most rooms that I walk into. I think I'm pretty capable, but I think I've gotten to where I am largely because of my work ethic and my ability to always find a way. That's the other part of that.
Well, couldn't agree with you more. Craig, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.